G'day viewers. I regularly get comments along the lines of, "You're my hero," which is nice and a little bit weird to be on the receiving end of, quite honestly. I always assume the person doesn't literally mean hero, they just wanted to say something positive, supportive, they like what I'm saying, and that's an easy way to say it. Because the concept of hero itself can get very dangerous if you take it too far. Because when it comes down to it, there's no such thing as a hero. Heroes are fictional constructs from books, comics, movies, whatever. Ordinary people can do great things, can do heroic acts, can do awesome things. And it's great to have role models, and it's great to have someone to aspire to, and it's great to have someone that you want to follow. But the word hero can get you into all sorts of trouble. The biggest problem with the term hero is it suggests someone's perfect. And nobody's perfect. I've actually been thinking about this idea for quite a while. One of the first things that made me think of it was when a wrestling dude, probably on steroid rage, murdered his family and committed suicide. And a friend of mine said he was doubly upset by it because he always regarded the guy as a hero. And first I thought it was just a pretty ordinary choice of a hero. But look, let's forget about picking on celebrities and sports people. They're too easy as targets. Let's look at some people who truly did really great things and why it's still dangerous to call them heroes. Fred Hollows was an Australian eye doctor who decided that it was unacceptable that so many people in Australian Aboriginal communities and later in other developing countries around the world were suffering from permanent blindness from traditions like trachoma, which could actually be treated if someone would just go out there and do it. Now, he developed a low-cost, effective procedure that he taught other people to do, and the Fred Hollows Foundation still does this all around the world. So we're talking about a guy who personally saved the sight of thousands of people. And beyond that, he set it up in such a way that this work continues to be done after his death. This is an amazing breakthrough. He went for people who had no one looking after them when he could have just gone into private practice and made a fortune and helped people who also deserve to be helped. But he dedicated his whole life to other people. Now, it's pretty common for someone to call him a hero. He was awarded Australian of the Year at one point. But see, this is where I have the problem, because it's like suggesting that he's perfect. Now, for instance, I heard him interviewed once where he went on this really quite bizarre rant about how homosexuality should be illegal because that's how AIDS gets spread. Now, I know that would make some people say he's even more of a hero and they'd want to worship him more. Those people are idiots and I'm not talking to them. Now, to state the obvious, Fred Hollows wasn't a stupid man, but he was clearly grossly homophobic, and this bigotry stopped him from thinking rationally. It isn't just that I personally find the homophobia really offensive and quite disgusting. It's also pretty stupid and unsupportable logically. Now, let's just go that first, gay sex isn't the only disease vector for AIDS. In fact, in the communities he was working with, in many cases it's not even the primary disease vector for AIDS. But second, the idea of legislating morality, it never works. History shows that it just doesn't change people's behaviour, and in fact driving it underground tends to make things worse because people get into riskier behaviour. So it's quite frankly a stupid position to take. But when you look at it, Fred Hollows did more good in an average day than most people do in their whole lives. So, you know what? I still think he deserves to be held up as a role model, someone who did great things. But don't forget, he's not a Superman, he's a human, and humans have flaws and shortcomings. As another example, I want to tell you about Edward Dunlop, also known as Weary Dunlop. He was an Australian surgeon who served in the army during World War II, and he ended up being captured by the Japanese. And he was put in the Changi prison camp, and he was put into the forced labour camps that built the Thai-Burma Railway. Now, if you don't know about those incidents in World War II, it's worth doing a little bit of research so you can understand just how horrible this was. The barbarism of the Japanese army all through the Pacific some of the most disgusting examples of what supposed human beings can do to other human beings. They were cruel, brutal, vicious, sadistic, and far more of the prisoners died than survived. Now, as an officer and a surgeon, Dunlop was directly responsible for saving the lives of men, easing the pain, and just trying to lead them. And he went beyond his work as a doctor. He stood up to the barbarity of the Japanese, and that is an incredibly risky thing to do. And when he saved so many lives and just eased the suffering of so many more, obviously you are going to hear the men who served under him call him a hero, and that's understandable. But again, he was an incredibly brave man. He struggled against a circumstance that I think just mildly 99% of the population would be crushed by, and he stood up and was an inspiration to so many people. But again, he's not perfect. After the war, he went back to his work as a surgeon, and he continued to do great work. But apparently, bit of a prick as a boss, a real control freak who was quite mean to people, and if you didn't like the way he did things, he'd just go right over the top of you. And you know what? I'm going to give him that. I honestly think he earned the right to be a grumpy old bugger. But my big point is that when someone does great things, that doesn't make them a hero. They're not a saint. They're a person. And people have failings. So to summarize that whole thing, I'd say don't have heroes. Role models, yes. People who inspire you, awesome. Someone to aim towards their level, that's great. But don't call people heroes. They're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. And if you do idolize someone to that extent, you're probably going to be crushed by the realization one day that they have a failing. And some people who are held up as role models end up having really quite horrible personal failings. So don't get too caught up in the whole idea of heroes, particularly because sometimes that just stops people from trying themselves because they can't measure up. The person you're calling a hero probably can't measure up to it. They probably hate the idea that people are putting them up on that pedestal. So give them a break and give yourself a break, and don't go on too much about heroes. Because, you know, really, even the comic book heroes, they wear their underpants on the outside. What the hell is that about?